Hello, Internet. Welcome to another episode of the Get Geek podcast. This week, we're going to do a little bit of discussion on some recent news. We're going to give you a mini spoiler-free review of The Last of Us 2, the fastest-selling PlayStation 4 exclusive of all time. And we're going to talk about some news regarding the Flash movie. But before we get into that, let's introduce the crew. I'm Jose.
This is Wolfie.
AJ.
Eli.
And this is Walt.
Welcome, guys. It's good to hear from you all again. I hope everyone is doing okay. So, as always, for the last couple of weeks, we have a couple of disclaimers and some statements for you. First of all, we are recording our podcast remotely. So, if there are any sound issues or artifacts, please bear with us. We've actually all gotten some new equipment, so we're hoping that that's a good way to kind of mitigate those sound issues. We're doing the best that we can. We want you guys to know that we're doing the best that we can. If you hear any issues, feel free to share with us and let us know, because we'll do everything we can to fix it and make it sound right for you guys. Besides that, as well, if you like our podcast, if you like our content, if you'd like to see some direction in our content, you want to give us some feedback, the best way to do any of those things is to like, rate, share, and subscribe, or reach out to us. You can find us on Get Geek Podcast on Instagram. Of course, you can find us on all your favorite podcast platforms: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever all your favorite podcasts are sold. So again, the best thing to do if you want to support our podcast and you really enjoy it is to like, rate, share, and subscribe. So I think we should jump right into it. What do you think, guys? You guys ready to discuss all the news of the week?
Before you do that, just
yes,
just to put it out there, we do have an active giveaway going on. If you jump onto our Instagram page, we are giving away a Funko Pop Vegeta character. So the contest ends July 3rd?
Kakarot.
I believe.
No, it's not.
Yeah, so
that's what he would say. Like
that's what he would say.
That's
what he would say. Yeah. I thought you were saying that it's a Kakarot.
So just check it out. All the information's on the Instagram page, guys. Just check it out.
I love Vegeta, but 50% of his dialogue on the show is Kakarot.
That's true.
That's what I meant to say it. But anyway, yeah. Actually, that's true. Kakarot. They just say that name quite a bit.
In the first movie.
Let's jump into it, and definitely, guys, sign up for our Instagram giveaway. We can't wait to give one of you guys that Vegeta Funko Pop. It's freaking awesome. It's one of Vegeta's training Funko Pops. So anyway, let's jump right into it. The Last of Us spoiler-free mini review. So this has to be spoiler-free because I'm actually the only one that started playing it thus far. I believe the guys are most of the way through the first one. And right off the bat, for my spoiler-free review, I will say that I love the game. I absolutely love it. I think it's better than the first one, okay? And I'll explain a few reasons why. Now, one of the main criticisms of the first game, and you guys can tell me, and I think you've said that this is one of your main criticisms of the first game, is that it can get a little repetitive. Which I understand. There are definitely some action scenes and set pieces that repeat themselves. I think the game does a good job, for the most part, of pacing, for the most part of making some action scenes a little bit different. With The Last of Us 2, what I've found so far, and this is probably the main complaint for a lot of people, this is not the main complaint because there are a million complaints, some of which I'll address without spoiling it, like I said. But some people are complaining that the game is a little too long. And I agree. Some of the different levels and sequences can be a little bit overlong. And the first quarter of the game can probably especially suffers from that. Another part of the repetitiveness from the first game was the scenes with the infected can be a little repetitive. Fighting those zombies can be a little repetitive. And in this one, it's kind of the same. There are some really great set pieces surrounding the affected. One which comes pretty early on in the game and leads to a major plot point, which I will, again, address without spoiling it. what I will say is this, and most of you who have played the game probably understand what I'm talking about. There's a character who goes through a significant challenge, we'll call it, very early on in the game. And a lot of people are stating that this character would never allow themselves into that situation. I rebut that by saying, and again, without trying to spoil this too much, the character's been through a lot.
Make sure you don't accidentally spoil the first game either.
Yeah, I won't spoil the first game at all. I promise you that. I'm not going to spoil the ending for you there. But the character has been through a lot in the intervening years. One of the things that's happened for them is that they've developed a greater level of trust for their companions. And
hey, Jose, can I ask a question?
Yes.
How far along? What's the time frame between the two games? Do they make mention of the?
They do.
Oh, they do.
Yes,
okay.
They do. So between the ending of The Last of Us 1 and this game, about 5 years have passed.
Okay.
I think it's been about 7 years since the two games were separated and released. So that's actually kind of semi-real time. But so there's a lot of issues that some characters say that this particular character wouldn't be so trusting, we'll call it. But this character is now part of a community. They're not a leader. And what this community does is they actually recruit people. They bring people into their community. So the actions of this character in this very important sequence in the first couple of hours, to me, makes sense because he's not the only one making those decisions that lead to this big plot point. We'll put it that way. All right. The graphics on this game, I think that's something that's been generally agreed upon, whether you like the game or not. The graphics are amazing. Graphics are absolutely amazing. And I don't want to complain or bring down any other recent game. But, I've been playing also alongside this game. I've been playing Final Fantasy Remake, which has beautiful graphics as well. It's a different style of graphics. But the level of detail in the light, in the environments, the character animations, just the character animations for combat, the character animations for dialogue, the character faces. There's a part in this game where one of the characters, and this, there's a lot of things that happen to a lot of characters, but one of the characters is actually hanging, and I won't say what happens, but their face starts to turn red. It's details like that make the graphics in this game just utterly incredible, like on a new level.
The Last of Us as a style of game is more of a film, really.
Yes.
So it's definitely more rooted in realism.
I think the environments, though, are where it stands out to me, though, because the environments are something that a game rooted in realism or not can make stand out. And certainly the environments in every other PlayStation game I played, there are some beautiful ones.
Well, no,
but this one, this one, like the photo mode is something that I actually want to explore because it's so beautiful, the graphics in this game. With one of the things that I really enjoy about the combat, especially when you fight against human characters, because again, without spoiling it, there's factions that are involved in the conflict in this game. Fighting some of the human characters, especially the Scars, won't tell you who they are, won't tell you what they're about, won't tell you how you interact with them. Fighting the Scars in this game is utterly terrifying. It's tense, it's action-packed, and the great part about this game you don't really see in the first game is that if you're really good at it and you're really smart about it, and I want to play this game on a higher difficulty to see if I can do it, like you can switch from being the hunted to the hunter real fast if you're smart about how you deal with conflicts in this game, which I absolutely love because you feel like a total badass at certain points when you're taking out entire crews and not a single one of them notices you. And the AI can be wonky at times, but I think that's a suffering for almost any game, especially games that involve stealth, because you can't actually make the AI perfect. You would never beat the game. So I think that's a fair point, but also it's something you have to balance in a video game, in gameplay, because if these characters were as aware as real human characters, you'd be dead in seconds. So
I have one question that's it's a little bit of a gripe, I guess, that I have on the first game that I'm playing.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest gripe with Last of Us 1, I guess, is sometimes I feel lost where I don't have like any direction. Like maybe I missed a comment that he might have said, like, "Oh, we need to go to this laboratory," and if I didn't like hear him or understand them or pay attention to it, after he says it one time, like that's it. Like I don't have any other indicators of where I'm supposed to be going. Is that still kind of the way that it is? Is it meant to be where you have to try to discover it on your own until you wait long enough to then get a hint? Or
Well, that actually brings me to one point that I wasn't going to mention, but I'll mention it very quickly in passing. The settings, especially the accessibility settings in this game, let me put it to you this way. There was a very popular YouTube and Twitter streamer who is actually legally blind. When he saw some of the accessibility settings in this game, he cried because they give you such a wealth of accessibility settings that people who are legally blind can play this game. They tell you, like, they have voiceover that can tell you where items are. They have auto pickup on items. They have a way to your character will auto aim to a certain extent, or the camera will line up and automatically line up with the direction your character is moving. You can create high contrast so the characters are really red or really blue. Like I can't even describe all the accessibility settings in detail without going into it for a little while, but apparently this is the new standard for accessibility settings. But to your point, Wolfie, one thing that they do, and they do this a little bit less in the first game, but you can actually set this to however you would want it to be. They give you in-game hints, but it's really well done how they do it, because if you're traveling with another character and you're stumped, the other character will say, "Why don't we try this?" And then a little checkpoint will show up where you're supposed to go.
Right, so and they do that in the first one. It's just I feel like they don't do it quickly enough or enough in general. Like it's sometimes I remember being in this building in the hotel where for whatever reason I kept going room after room, level after level, and it just I had no hint until like about 10-15 minutes. Ellie finally said like, "Hey, there's a ladder over here. Why don't we try that?" But that's like a whole 10 minutes of me like frustratingly looking for some sort of hint of where I'm supposed to be going. And sometimes like again, maybe I'm just trying to rush through the game so I can play through the second one, but it can be a little frustrating sometimes. And I was just wondering if like it's if they've improved that in any way, just because I'm the type of person that when I want to play a game for the story, I don't have as much as I wish I did have the time. I don't have the time to spend in total, let's say, a couple hours just meandering about hoping I figure out where I'm supposed to be going.
Yeah. In this game, it's much quicker, the hints. And not only that, what I like is you can turn them off entirely. You can have like a middle ground where they sometimes kind of remind you where to go. And even when you're traveling alone, the character that you're playing as will eventually like speak to themselves essentially and have that monologue and say like, "Oh, maybe I should try this." Or you can have it happen all the time. So you can kind of set the sensitivity, as it were. And it's definitely not as long as it was in the first game. That's for sure. Because it's only, I think if I've ever been stumped, I've only maybe wandered around for a minute or two before the character's like, "Yo, what the heck are you doing? Go this way." Or try this. Yeah. So that's definitely much improved. It's definitely much improved in that way. And I understand that gripe too, because I got lost in the first game also, and I do get lost in this game occasionally, but it's not as frequent. And the environments some of the environments are much bigger. There's actually an environment that's kind of an open world environment early in the game that again might be a little overlong and could have been done better, but for what it is, it kind of shows what this type of game can be as a more open world experience if they ever decide to make a third one, which we'll see. So very quickly, I want to address one other thing in the leaks. I did address one of the other ones, like I said earlier, where people questioned a character's motivations. So the leak, actually, there was an issue with, let's call it SJW agendas in this game. And that kind of infuriates me because I don't know if you've picked up on it or not while playing the first game, but I did before I even got to Left Behind, which is the DLC where they make this clear. Ellie's a lesbian. Ellie likes girls. And in this game, people make a big deal out of it. I'm like, did you not play the first game? Did you not play the first game's DLC?
Thank you.
But it's not a big plot point. It's not a big plot point at all.
It's still a spoiler.
It's not a spoiler.
It is a spoiler.
I mean, I figured that out in the first few hours of the first game.
Yeah.
How could you figure it out in the first few hours?
Because of the way she interacts with other characters. You see that she's not interested. And then she mentions a character.
That's not necessarily true, because in the character, what's the black kid?
Sam.
Sam.
The little kid.
Like there was like a little something there. It felt like not just friends.
I have to redefine what spoilers are because,
well, clearly information that you don't get unless you play the game. That's spoilers.
I thought you felt more pity for him than anything else.
I think towards the end, but in the beginning, like their first interaction, they were like, they ran off together and stuff like that, and they were, kind of, interacting together.
Man. That's all.
I mean, clearly, like at the very end of everything, you understand that, but like it can be perceived as something else.
Okay. So that was a spoiler then, and I apologize for that. But I have to say I'm kind of furious about that. It's like, you really going to make that a reason why you're going to give this game a 0 and review bomb it?
Yeah, no, that's stupid. There should be absolutely no reason.
We live it right now, Jose. I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. People.
That's what happens.
People have agendas when they're looking at things. You know what I'm saying? And if it doesn't fit in their worldview, they automatically just piss all over it.
It's ludicrous because they're the ones with agendas. To me, they're the ones with agendas that are shooting down real life. Like, people, this is who people are. People have different sexuality and different gender.
It's the whole argument whether I don't need politics in my sports. It's the same thing. It's just people nowadays, they're so hypersensitive, and or whatever you want to call it, that if it doesn't fit into their agenda, they don't have the open-mindedness to say, hey, you know what? Let me just look at it for what it is. I'm just going to trash on it because I just don't think that it's, it doesn't fit my whatever, you know what I mean?
I don't want to see that kind of thing. It's like, these are people. People are not politics. And that's, I think, what kind of infuriates me about that. Like, there are people, everybody who says this probably knows somebody like that. And so knows somebody who is gay or whatever it is. And it's not an agenda to me, because when you see that in a movie and it's two straight characters, nobody bats an eye about it. So, but I don't want to get into that too much, because then we're going to get into too much spoiler territory, because I'm going to get upset. The only other thing that I'll address very quickly is there's also like a discussion in this game about how badass the new characters are compared to, say, some characters from the old game. It's the second game. Of course they have to be able to do cooler stuff. Why would you want to do the same things that you did in the first game with no new controls, no new gameplay, no new weapons, no new mechanics, when the problem with the first game that even people who loved it had was that it's repetitive? To me, that's another stupid point.
For years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
There's new mechanics that actually make the game so much more fun and so much more exciting. And maybe if they had switched roles, then the character that you want to be the more badass character would be the more badass character. But it's not the sequel. The sequel has to be better. So to me, that's a ridiculous gripe. And there was a slander of a certain character who people were like, why is this character so badass? This whole story is about revenge. And when you understand what that character is trying to get revenge for, if you don't think that character will become the most badass human being on earth, you are delusional. Like, if I had to exact the type of revenge that one of these characters felt the need to exact, I would be freaking Batman, Superman, The Flash, Hulk Hogan, The Ultimate Warrior, like every single badass superhero and character you've ever known. And to me, that's another ridiculous gripe. But let me narrow it down from any type of spoiler territory. Graphics amazing, gameplay is amazing. I love the story so far. I know that some people are having gripes with the end. I already know what the end is, and I also so far agree with the ending. I agree with the outcome of the game. If you watch the game, you watch the flashbacks, you look at the story, you'll understand why it ends the way that it does. It can be a little overlong. It still has some instances where it can be repetitive. But as an overall game, it's to me almost as perfect as a video game can get. You know that the first one is one of my favorite games of all time. This one is better to me, so it's also one of my favorite games of all time. I'm not going to give it a perfect score, but if I were to give it a score, I would say it's a 9.5 out of 10. I think it's a fantastic game. I think anybody who's a fan of the first game and is open-minded about the story and not going to shout about SJWs and all this other nonsense like people did for The Last Jedi or certain other properties, if you're not going to shout that down and you're going to let the story evolve the way that it should, and you watch each story beat and you understand why each story beat is in this game, you will love it. That's the way that I feel. So I give the game a 9.5 out of 10, and that's my spoiler-free review of The Last of Us 2.
9.5 out of 10 before finishing it. Wow.
Before finishing it. And, you know, I may revise that. But I'm actually pretty close to the end of the game. I think about 5 hours or so. I played about 20 hours. So I'm getting real close. And so far, every time that I get to a new sequence or a new scene or a new set piece, I'm blown away all over again. And I think that's the mark of a good game.
Just one quick thing before we get into the next thing. One of the other things that I've been seeing within the reviews is the level of violence that's in this game. And listen, the first one wasn't you know anything soft either, because you know I'm 13 hours into the game. I've already murdered like 376 people.
Yeah.
If you do the math, I'm killing people at 2 minutes a clip. You know what I'm saying? The first one is pretty bloody, but they said the level of violence in this one is just even more extreme.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, so you know, I wanted to bring that out because you know that is probably the thing that I've seen the most in terms of, you know, when people are reviewing it, they say it's a really, really good game, but damn, these, you know, there's so much violence, like, you know, and it's over the top violence, and sometimes, again, some of the things that I've read is that it's violence for the sake of violence, you know, where there are issues where like a character is doing absolutely nothing, but because you got to get past that character, you just straight up murder them, you know.
I mean, I'm not uncomfortable with it. Maybe there's something wrong with me, but they wrote the game and with very high levels of realistic violence. I don't think it's over the top. It's very realistic, actually. They wrote that in mind so that you could feel the impact of the violence that you're putting on other people, as well as they have dogs in the game. And a lot of people they killed every human in the game, no problem, and they couldn't kill a single dog. And I kind of feel the same way too. I try to avoid killing the dogs when they show up, but they're a pain in the ass and they can smell you. So sometimes like you kind of have to, but to give you an idea, like we've already discussed, when you cut somebody's throat in this game, they slice forward to completely remove their throat. It's crazy.
Well, I did send you guys that article, which you know they said that they actually viewed videos on how to kill people to make it as realistic as possible. I can just imagine the amount of psychiatric bills that those developers had to go through just to get through that stuff. You know what I mean?
I mean, if a dog kills you, it bites your face off. You can blow somebody's face off with a weapon. You can blow off their legs with a shotgun. Like it's very violent. It's insanely violent. But that was the point of the game. And some people think it's hypocritical because it's a video game and the whole point is to kill people. But I think it's effective. And it's also part of the story. It's also why the game ends and progresses the way that it does.
Well, I had sent you an article about how, and it's a really good article. I really think you should read it. It's by Polygon and it's by Chris Plant, and he talks about violence and how this genre has jumped on, and progressed since then. But that's a topic for a whole nother episode. You know what I'm saying?
When we've all played it, we can have a spoiler discussion, perhaps, if you guys really feel that it's worth it.
No doubt, definitely.
All right. So that's, like I said, that's our spoiler-free review of The Last of Us Part 2. Go play it, and if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't, but give it a chance. Don't just listen to the leaks and don't play 2 hours and review bomb it. And that's my opinion on that.
So going from a person going from a game that actually murders everybody to a character that really doesn't like to use guns at all.
Yes.
Did you like that segue?
I love that segue, actually. I wouldn't have thought of that. I wouldn't have thought of that at all.
There you go.
All right.
Depends on which one.
Back, bro.
Michael
Keaton
returns.
We don't not confirmed yet. It's not confirmed yet.
Not yet.
And we don't even know if he's gonna don the cowl either. So
I have some theories about that, but why don't you tell us a little bit about the news?
Yeah, the report does say that he will be putting on the cape. It's a very specific report. It's a report that was put out earlier this week by the Hollywood Reporter, and it's stuff that I'm not going to say it came out of left field and stuff, but it was definitely interesting when it dropped, and the internet went crazy over it. So the report itself was that Michael Keaton is in talks with Warner Brothers and the director of the Flash movie. I forget what his first name is, but
didn't they go through?
What was that?
A different director? Didn't they change directors initially?
Yeah, it's Musa Mehdi. It's the director from the It franchise that's doing the Flash movie.
Muschietti, I think, right?
He's having the discussion with Warner Brothers because they kind of own the company and stuff. So they're the ones that are going to pay him. And so the report has him coming back to don the cowl as Batman in the Flash movie, which they're speculating that is really Flashpoint. Now, the interesting thing is that before this news dropped, there was rumors going around that Jeffrey Dean Morgan was also in talks to play Thomas Wayne in the same movie.
Okay.
Those talks kind of stopped hard, with a hard stop as soon as everybody started hearing, this other news of Michael Keaton. And so the way it seems like it, the way the report framed it, is that he's not going to be playing Thomas Wayne. The report today was that Thomas Wayne is not even in the script for Flashpoint, and that he would play Bruce Wayne in sort of a Nick Fury type role where he's kind of the guy manipulating things behind the scenes and putting the group together and things of that nature. So I find the news very interesting, but it does open up a lot of interesting possibilities for the character and the universe itself going forward.
Interesting, because that was going to be my theory. Honestly, I didn't get a chance to read all the details on the report, but I was thinking that he would make a perfect Thomas Wayne for this movie. I mean, they don't have a Martha Wayne that can kind of play the other role, and we'll talk about it in a moment when we get into
that'd be a little bit. I don't know.
That would be weird.
That would be weird because we know him as Batman, and we know him as one of the best Batman of all the Batmans. So that have played. So he's that iconic that putting him in a different role other than Bruce Wayne would be, I don't know, uncomfortable.
And just having Michael Keaton come back is kind of a risky move, because if you think about it, a lot of those older Batman movies weren't well received, especially after he left the role. He's actually listed as one of the best Batman on film. So, if you don't treat him and his role with the respect that it needs, you kind of run yourself into one of these things where you might tarnish what came before by putting him in and kind of pigeonholing him into this movie, which I hate to say it, Warner Brothers is kind of famous for.
I think that for me, it would be okay for him to play a Thomas Wayne character, even though it doesn't seem like that's going to happen, simply because of the fact that this movie, the entire story behind Flashpoint exists in a multiverse. I guess to break it down very, 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 very simply, and we'll get into it in more detail. The story of Flashpoint, it's obviously centered around the Flash, but it involves the entire DCEU, which might be an interesting movie. It might almost be like Justice League 2 in a sense, if you think about the story, because for those that know, the background of Barry Allen's Flash is that Reverse Flash kills Barry Allen, the Flash's mother, when Barry Allen is very young.
Wait, hold on. Are we going into like basically a crash course of Flashpoint?
Very, very simple. This won't take more than a couple of minutes.
Because I would love to hear. I would love to hear from AJ.
He can definitely expand upon it, but
AJ is definitely the subject matter expert here on that.
Yeah, you can definitely expand upon it, AJ. Like I said, this will be super simple. He goes so his mother is murdered in his original origin story by Reverse Flash, who's his biggest arch nemesis. And in Flashpoint, essentially, and this was touched upon in the Flash TV series. I haven't gotten to the end, but they did a somewhat watered down version of the story that didn't involve any other DC superheroes. But Barry Allen, when he's the Flash, he decides to go back in time and save his mother. But what that does is it destroys the DC universe essentially.
Don't forget the father also, because the father is framed for the murder and he goes away and he's incarcerated basically for
right. I'm trying to get to Flashpoint. I'm not trying to go to Barry Allen's backstory. That's something that maybe AJ could elaborate on if he'd like. But I'm just trying to stick to Flashpoint. And so when he does that, basically the DC universe goes into disarray. Bruce Wayne gets murdered instead of his parents. Thomas Wayne becomes Batman. Martha Wayne becomes the Joker in this continuity. Wonder Woman and Aquaman are at war, and they're like killing everybody on Earth basically that gets in their way. And there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of other details, but that's the basic story behind it that it looks like they might be leaning towards, and that's why I thought maybe Michael Keaton could play a Thomas Wayne role. But obviously, and all adaptations in DC, they've made some changes too, and him just being an older Batman is certainly something that they could do, and certainly somewhere that they can go with the character.
I don't know quite how well. I don't know how I feel about that, because we already have a Thomas Wayne, and at least for me, it'd be a little jarring if 1 minute he's this one guy and then the next minute someone else.
Well, it was Jeffrey Dean Morgan in the recent movies. In the Joker, it was a different actor.
Wait, what?
I mean, well, it was Jeffrey Dean Morgan was in
but the Joker, that's
Batman
not
versus Superman.
Mainstream continuity.
No, I understand, but that's why I think Walt mentioned Jeffrey Dean Morgan was in talks to play the role of Thomas Wayne in this movie, because he's already played Thomas Wayne in the DCEU in the flashbacks in Batman versus Superman. I think was when they did his flashback again, his origin.
Yep.
It was him, and it was I can't remember the actress's name, Maggie Cohan from The Walking Dead. Lauren Cohan was Martha Wayne. So there's been talks for both of them to play those roles if Flashpoint was ever made, which is what this movie has been supposed to be for some time. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It seems like a strange place to go for the first Flash movie, but I also would love to see Aquaman and Wonder Woman and all of these other characters get involved in this. Like I said, it basically becomes another Justice League movie.
The only problem I see with this is that, well, it's not really a problem. It's just that it's going to take a little bit to see Aquaman go from, hey, dude, want to go get a beer down at the pub, to, all right, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die, let's flood this city.
I think that's a bigger problem with the Warner Brothers iteration of these DC movies, is because from the get-go, they've always been one step behind with the MCU, and they've always been trying to catch up. And to your point, Jose, to have Flashpoint be the first Flash movie is a little jarring, because, I've always thought that, the Justice League movie, the Batman versus Superman movie, they were rushed, and you see all the implications behind it. That we didn't get time to really connect with Ben Affleck's Batman, even though he did an amazing job in those movies. But I would have liked to have seen a Batman movie before we jumped into jumbling all together. And again, we're doing the same thing now with Flash and Flashpoint. You're not giving us enough time to get to know the characters before you're jumping into this major. And listen, Flashpoint is a huge DC storyline. This is one of the seminal storylines in the DC comic universe.
Yep.
And to have that be the first one, it just seems, again, you're kind of reliving the mistakes that you've done in the past and whatnot, you know.
Yeah, I would like to elaborate on that, because I feel like this movie, just like Walt said, was too early to come out, because we haven't had that much background context for like the other characters, so they're not really building like a strong story before they get into the main movies. And you still have the Snyder Cut coming out, which I feel, is it before or after?
It's gonna be the last I heard about the Snyder Cut, it's coming out on HBO either early to mid 2021. So we're not that far away from it. We're probably about a year or less before we get that. And the Flash, they haven't even started production on it yet. So
yeah. So Jose, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, no, I was actually going to kind of agree with you, because if you think about how this is going to work, there's a couple of slight issues, and I want to know your guys' opinion on this, AJ, Eli, Wolfie, Walt. First of all, like, we all kind of semi-agree on this. Like, if you're going to put this much in the first Flash movie, we don't have his origin story, which, again, that's something that you don't necessarily need to throw in every comic book movie these days. But we do have to kind of establish what the heck the Flash has been doing since Justice League. So that's going to take some time to establish. And then
the Flash
go ahead,
isn't
yeah.
as a notable character as some of these other origin stories are. You know, everybody knows about Spidey, everybody knows about Batman, everybody knows about Superman, but the Flash is kind of like that secondary or tertiary character that maybe a lot of people don't know the origin of his character, you know.
And that's why I think that it should be necessary to give him. I mean, the reason that people don't know him is because nobody's told them about him. And I think that DC might be kind of realizing that, which is why they're trying to make Flash the first film in the new set of, you know, the DCEU movies and stuff. Because, you know, tried and true Batman and Superman, they're the old guard, you know, and they need someone that's young. And the Flash, for better or worse, is their young, new, hip character, you know, the one that like the millennials are going to relate with, similar to Spider-Man and so on. So, but I fear that they're gonna repeat the same mistakes that they made with, you know, BVS and Justice League, which is cram too much in one film to try to catch up. You know, if they're, I don't know anything about Flashpoint. Really, to be honest with you, it's still very confusing to me. But imagine trying to cram, you know, all these confusing things, especially when you deal with time, with time travel, and then the consequences of time travel. That's complicated enough to launch a new chapter in the DCEU multiverse and the whole nine, whatever it is. Not multiverse, but the new universe of films. I think that this is going to end up being too much, and it's going to be too sloppily done. I have that fear, just because they don't have the best track record. So,
and
I mean, you can go ahead, Eli. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. The one thing I'm really afraid of, which I know might not happen considering we have a new director who might take it a little bit slower, but a lot of the other movies, since they were rushed, maybe this one might be rushed. I don't honestly know, but I hope not, because if this movie fails, I think who knows what could happen. It's probably going to be a lot of damage to the DCU, considering they haven't really had any good movies since when? They had Man of Steel and like Wonder Woman and all.
And you had Aquaman.
Well, Aquaman was pretty good.
Aquaman was actually good.
You had Shazam, which was pretty fun movie.
Yeah,
but to be fair, none of them were standout. There's no Black Panther. There's no, you know, Winter Soldier. There's no.
Yeah, I think Wonder
There's
Woman
no movie on that level.
Yeah.
You know.
You know, that kind of brings up a point for me too. Like Gal Gadot, I can't remember which one it is,
Gadot.
but she plays.
I believe it's Gadot.
Yeah, so Gal Gadot plays a good Wonder Woman, but she's got to be evil in this movie because Wonder Woman is freaking evil in Flashpoint. Can Gal Gadot really pull off? Like, she's like kind of cute and nice and talking about love in the Wonder Woman movie, and like she's supposed to be kind of innocent and naive. How are we going to turn Gal Gadot into this vicious, evil warlord that's like decapitating people and murdering people and fighting this massive war that's killing millions of people in this movie, and do that like on a dime? You know what I mean?
Oh,
I mean,
really?
I'm not taking it away from her as an actress, but I haven't seen her in anything where she plays like an evil, sadistic character.
Huh.
So I'm kind of wondering if they can pull that off.
I think they can. I mean, she's a pretty good actress, sorry. And it's not that hard to pull it off for women, especially because they have something that I think a lot of guys have trouble pulling off, which is sass. She gives a little bit of sass, and she gives like that evil eye, and it's every man will cower to that. So at least I feel like it. So
I mean, there's a difference between sass and like villainous murder, but
I guess.
I mean, we'll see. I don't want to take it away from her as an actor, like you said. She is a good actor. I just haven't seen her pull that off yet. And sometimes good actors can't be good, and they can't pull off dark characters quite as well. They have a wheelhouse. They have something that they excel at. So I am a little worried about that. And the other thing that I am kind of worried about too is, so now you have this continuity where you have Robert Pattinson Batman, you've had Ben Affleck Batman, you're possibly bringing Michael Keaton back as Batman. There's a Thomas Wayne in this storyline that plays Batman. So you basically have to juggle 4 Batmans in recent movies.
I guess that's the reason why you're doing Flashpoint. But then, just think of it this way. Then also, you have all these Batmans that are kind of lurking in the periphery. You have, so now, is George Clooney canon? Is Val Kilmer canon? I mean, you have all these Batmans, but the thing about it is that the only character that's going to make a substantial change in the Flashpoint, as we know it from now, would be just Batman, because you're expecting Gal Gadot to continue on as Wonder Woman. Flash, Ezra Miller is going to be Flash, well, at least that we know of right now, pending any legal issues that he has.
Right, there's that too. That complicates.
Yeah, Henry Cavill just said he was willing, ready, and able to continue playing Clark Kent and Superman. Which kind of debunks all the other rumors beforehand where he was leaving and he didn't want to be Superman anymore. He just recently came out and said, "I will be Superman because I feel that there's still more stories I got to tell. I'll be Superman until they kick me out." Basically is what he said.
Is he going to be a scrawny wimp in Flashpoint? Because if you remember the story, they have Superman locked away for decades in the Flashpoint story, and he's still powerful.
You have that great Jason Momoa Super Bowl commercial where he sheds all his muscles and he's really a skinny guy. So they can do, if they can do that to him, they could do it to Cavill. You know what I mean?
That's one of the greatest commercials of all time.
I love that commercial. You know what I'm saying? But getting back to the point, no other character is changing, and like Jose said, just in recent memory, we're gonna have at the very least 3 different iterations of Batman.
Yeah.
So how does that work?
I did want to say, and I'm not as huge a fan of this animated show, but the idea that people had that I don't know, it could still come to fruition. But I feel like the perfect way to bring Michael Keaton back to the DC universe was not this. The perfect way to bring him back and to create almost a brand new property that hasn't been, I mean, it was super popular. Bring back Batman Beyond. Have him play old Batman. Have the young Batman character in the future with the really cool, like high-tech Batman suit, and have him be the way he's supposed to be, which maybe it will be because they're saying he's going to be like a Nick Fury style mentor, which he was in Batman Beyond. He was the mentor to, what was it, Terry something? I can't remember his name.
Terry McGinnis.
Yes, thank you. That's what I was thinking, but I don't want to sound uninformed. Like I said, I didn't watch that show as much as I watched Batman the Animated Series,
It's a
but
great show.
you know,
It really
yeah,
is.
like
I
have
think
him come in. Go ahead.
I don't know. I honestly don't know why Batman Beyond hasn't been brought to the forefront of live action. I feel like it would be an
Right.
awesome show to be at least on HBO Max.
Yeah, like update Batman instead of reiterating Batman's story over and over and over
Yeah,
and over
man.
again. Like, who are we going to cast as him now? Screw it. Bring back Michael Keaton. He's old Batman. People will love that. Old fans of Batman and the Batman movies in the 80s and 90s will be blown away. And you get the animated fans of Batman Beyond are going to be blown away and really excited. And it brings a whole new level to the DCEU and a new timeline that you can play with that can make things far more interesting. I don't know why they haven't done that yet.
There's a great commission on Instagram. I just sent it to you guys. And we actually had it on our feed a couple of days ago by a gentleman. His tag is kibar.art, and it envisions Michael Keaton as you know, in the character of Bruce Wayne in Batman Beyond. And just looking at this just gives me chills because
Yeah,
like
it's
you
sick.
said, this would be an awesome franchise going forward, and it's a good way to update Batman.
Yeah, for people who don't want to see the same Batman stories over and over again, who want to see new Batman villains and again a new storyline, a new timeline, I feel like it's a natural extension that they just are taking advantage of. What I will say, you actually said something a little bit earlier, Wolfie, about how like the story can get a little complicated. You still would definitely want to watch the Flashpoint animated movie because it's really good. And it does find a way to bring these characters together in an hour and 21 minutes. It shows that bringing this complexity of story together is possible. But again, that's also from the perspective of some people who've watched the Flash TV show, who know a little bit about the Flash comic books and know a little bit about the Flash's backstory. It's going to be a harder sell because anybody who watches the animated cartoons is already pretty much a DC fan, at least in my opinion. The movies are a little bit more broad. The movies try to bring in a greater audience, certainly people who aren't necessarily either comic book fans, Batman fans, Flash fans, or any fans of any kind. So to bring that together is going to be really difficult. And it's possible that this could turn into a 2.5, 3 hour, absolutely bloated mess because they have so many DC characters in this one. There are some characters even in it, like Green Lantern is in it. We don't have Green Lantern yet.
Oh man.
Well, the animated film also did have the help that it is part of an ongoing animated universe there.
Absolutely.
So a lot of those characters were introduced in previous films right before they went into Flashpoint, which again, not to beat a dead horse, but that's probably the way to go. I mean, the reason why the MCU is so beloved is because they took their time with their characters, and they gave you movies beforehand introducing them, and we got to know these characters on a personal level before we kind of threw them all together. And then what made the Avengers such a great film is because at that point we knew what the characters were, and seeing the interactions between the characters, that was probably one of the best parts of the film. You don't have that with this,
And at least they found a smart way, if they were going to introduce characters in Avengers or other movies, like Black Panther, for instance, they found a way to smartly introduce him. Even though he didn't have his own movie yet, they found a smart way to introduce him in another movie. We don't have a movie that's at least announced yet, other than Wonder Woman 1984, but how much are they going to squeeze into that? We don't have another movie where we can introduce these characters, and at least in my opinion, and I don't know, actually, I'm curious to know what our resident super DC fan, AJ, thinks. Like, I don't know if there's a smart way to introduce these elements that need to be thrown into Flashpoint in Wonder Woman 1984, or maybe Zack Snyder's Justice League, which we did a podcast about that a few weeks ago. And AJ, you expressed a lot of reservation about that. You really didn't care about it. You really didn't want to see it. So I'm kind of curious what you think, again, as the most well-versed DC fan here. And probably, Flash is not your favorite character, but as more of a Flash fan than any of us are, how do you feel they can do this?
AJ,
Go ahead.
I think
This is what I've been waiting for. I want to hear AJ speak.
He's gonna hit us up with this, but I think AJ, you knew that beforehand, the Flash, before it became Flashpoint, wasn't it supposed to be a buddy cop movie with Cyborg originally?
Oh yeah, it was.
Right. So I think that would
Kind of glad that's not happening.
I think that if they had done that, they would have been able to set up Flashpoint better. Because tell me, how many people will know offhand that if the Flash runs fast enough, he can break the space-time barrier?
Yeah.
No.
And go back in time.
But again, this is why we need a Flash origin story.
But remember, we did get a glimpse of that in BVS, though.
Okay, no one knows how he did it.
True.
Yeah, nobody saw him run back into time. He just was there.
Flesh out his powers. Like say, hey, okay, I'm not saying it's going to be all about him and his speed, but the movie would have served as, okay, so this is what I can do already. What if I pushed myself and did this? That would have been a good way to set up Flashpoint, because you're setting up what he can do, what he can't do, what he probably can do. That would have been the better way to set up Flashpoint, instead of just shoehorning it in right away.
And we would get the cosmic treadmill.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
a weird plot device, but it's significant in Flash's history.
Yeah, I mean, the Flash's powers it's especially his power to travel through time, dimensions, and all that other stuff. That's something he kind of learns by accident in the comics at first. And then in Flashpoint, he makes the conscious decision to go back in time and save his mother's life from the Reverse Flash. But how do you jump from that, like that first point where he's like, oh, I can accidentally run back in time, to like, I'm going to run back to the moment that my mother was killed by the Reverse Flash and change it? And how do you establish the Reverse Flash?
And AJ,
it's not established yet.
You're a fan of the TV show, right? And what's the big arc when it comes to the TV show? That Barry doesn't know how to use his powers, but yet the villains are the ones that kind of force him to get better and better, right? Isn't that a big part of the TV show?
It is. It's almost like Dragon Ball in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Except that Vegeta's not
Please
actively
elaborate.
trying to push him. He's trying to overpower him, but it's kind of the same thing. But again, the only way they messed up. I'm sorry. The perfect way to set up they've already screwed the pooch. I'm sorry.
See, this doesn't give me any confidence.
I'm sorry. No, because at least.
All right. How did they screw the pooch?
Movie prior to even give you don't just say, oh, hey, look, the Flash can time travel, so he's gonna do it for the very first time in this movie. Like, I mean, we obviously know that he did it in Batman versus Superman, but it would have been much better storytelling if you planted the breadcrumbs in a movie prior to the Flashpoint movie.
Well, we still have to see the Snyder cut because Zack Snyder.
But that's not the Flash movie.
No, I know, but you have to remember, Snyder keeps telling all the fans, everybody's saying we're seeing too much of the movie, and he basically said, "F all of you guys, you haven't seen anything yet." And so maybe a lot of that backstory is told in the Snyder cut. And maybe that's kind of the failing of, there's a lot of things that Justice League did really, really wrong. But maybe the Snyder cut kind of cleans all that stuff up also,
Okay, but that's not...
AJ's really fuming here. You have no
He's gonna explode. He's gonna explode. Let me go ahead. Huh? Yeah. Go ahead. I'm gonna ask you a question when you have a moment, but go ahead and finish your point.
To me, that's like saying that's honestly like going from, okay, I want you to imagine this.
Mm-hmm.
So the basic progression of the DCEU was Superman. God, I feel like I'm forgetting someone.
What are you
It
talking
was
about?
Superman,
Man
the
of Steel.
DCEU
Yeah.
movie.
It's Man of Steel. It
Man
was
of Steel.
BVS. It was Justice
Okay,
League.
so how would you feel if you saw Iron Man 1 and then you went straight to Captain America Civil War and had the full cast and crew of Civil War?
That is actually a very, very good analogy right there.
Yeah, I agree.
That's why I don't think even with the Snyder Cut, you should do that. Flash needs his own movie to grow. Like, to shoehorn it all into a grand total of a movie and a half, that's poor.
And this is one of the reasons why I'm not a fan of DC in their
But
comics and their animated movies. I feel
No,
like
but the
they're too
comics do it
fragmented.
right. The comics do it right. I mean, the comics have had their issues. I'm not as much of a fan, but the comics do a much better job of this.
Well,
because
clearly, because that's the source material.
Well, put it this way. The comics do such a good job of establishing backstory that it gets insane, and that's why they have to do these reboots. So it's actually the opposite problem from the DCEU. They set nothing up. In the comics, they have 8 million different stories, and then it starts to get too difficult to deal with plot holes and inconsistencies. So they reboot things, usually with the Flash's help, because the man can run back in time. But that kind of relates to my big question for you, AJ, is if you were like, I think we all would agree that a Flashpoint movie would be something that we would want to see eventually, right?
Yep. But not now.
Right. But AJ, what do you think?
No, I don't think we should be getting Flashpoint right now. I'm sorry.
No, eventually. That's my question is eventually.
We're gonna get it anyway. We're gonna get it. So knowing that it's coming.
Well, hold on. Let me address my question. Let me address my question to AJ, because I want to address this very specifically to him for this reason. Let me get to the point of it. With the proper setup, right? A Flashpoint movie is something that you would probably want to see if they had the right setup for the Flash and other characters that are going to be in it. Is that something that is accurate for me to state that?
That is accurate, yes.
Okay. So from what you understand from the Flash and his characters, his villains, his backstory, if you were to make a Flashpoint movie, we know how they make comic book movies these days. They tend to center around trilogies, right?
Okay.
If you were to make a Flashpoint movie, where would you fit it in the trilogy? Would it be number 2 or number 3? Because we know it shouldn't be number 1. That's pretty well established. Would you want that to be a second movie or a third movie?
Honestly, it feels like a third movie.
I would say so. I would agree with that. I would say that it should be like, yeah, in the third movie that then sets up the actual universe. You know, it should be kind of like, almost like, I guess like, well, Iron Man 3 wasn't in. When did Iron Man 3 come out? See, but the thing is, it's hard to compare. It's hard to compare it with Marvel because they did it. They weaved the net so well.
I know, but this is my ideal. I think it compares to an Endgame. Honestly, I think it does.
It does,
because Endgame is everything changing. Right, that's what you're thinking too, AJ. Like this should be like Flashpoint should be an Endgame level event. It should be a Justice League movie, if anything. It shouldn't even fit in the Flash trilogy because everybody's in it. Why is it a Flash movie?
Well, it's like you talk about the animated movie is called Justice League Flashpoint.
Yeah.
But the only problem I do have with that is that sure you have everyone in it, but it's mostly the Flash's story.
Yes.
So I think that to still have it as a Flash movie as part of the trilogy would be a better fit. I mean, it'd be kind of unfair, but unless you change a few of the minor details of Flashpoint, it is a Flash movie.
Maybe a better comparison would be to make it more like Civil War then.
In a sense.
Because we have to compare it to the MCU. That's the only frame of reference we have.
Crisis.
Wouldn't the Crisis movies be more like an Endgame?
Crisis on Infinite.
Oh, you mean
Crisis
the
on Infinite Earths and things of that nature?
Yeah. That would be your real endgame if you were to do Crisis on Infinite Earths.
So this is like this movie would fit better as maybe a third movie in the Flash trilogy. That's an impetus that gets us to, again, for lack of a better term, DC's version of Infinity War and Endgame, which is really Crisis on Infinite Earths, which can easily be split up into a couple of movies the same way that Marvel did it.
You know, I think you're right about that because something about the Flashpoint idea on its own, because the whole idea behind Flashpoint is that this one thing that's being changed in time is basically sending cosmic waves throughout the universe, displacing things. I can very easily see it as that one thing that's the catalyst for someone like the Anti-Monitor to wake up. Because what essentially is happening with Flashpoint is that once he resets it, the whole of that reality is not completely gone, but you're wiping the slate there. And as the Anti-Monitor, his whole deal is that he eats universes. So it would stand to reason that a whole universe disappearing will be like, huh? Oh, this is a good time to wake up.
Yeah, it's one less meal I have, right?
No, not one less meal. It'd be like smelling eggs being cooked in the morning.
So let me ask you this question. And
I like
just
that analogy.
Going into the whole idea of where a Flashpoint movie would fall within the DCEU that's done properly, right? When we used to watch The Flash, which I don't watch anymore because I just fell off on it. But the idea of the Flash being a villain, right, was really strong. It was like a strong undercurrent throughout the show, right?
It kind of
because here you have Flash, and the Flash is resetting time multiple times. Really, if you think about it, for selfish reasons, right? It's all about him. It's all about him trying to save his mom, which is a good notion, but it's not good when you're screwing up, various lives. And I think in the show, one of the things was that Diggle lost his daughter.
Yeah.
No, his son became a daughter.
And then there was a lot of things that happened that kind of framed him as a villain. And so maybe a way of doing it is that you have the Flashpoint happening somewhere within the middle of this grand scheme, this grand story, and the Crisis on Infinite Earths is almost kind of like a resetting of everything that Flash done screwed up.
In a sense, that would be. That's not. Yeah, that's kind of in a realm of possibility. Yeah.
That brings me to another point, actually. And I haven't gotten this far in the Flash TV series, but I do know a little bit about what's transpired in the last season and in the big crossover events. Does this mean we're going to see Grant Gustin in there somehow? I don't know. Would that be that doesn't fit into the storyline, but the way that they're kind of setting things up and the way they kind of shoehorn certain things into the storylines in both the TV shows and the fact that they're kind of bringing this movie out so quickly, I almost feel like they might make the mistake of adding Grant Gustin, who plays the Flash on the TV show, into this somehow to further complicate things.
Well, they've done the reverse already.
Yeah, he was on the TV show.
Kind of ironic if that Flash pops in, because when Grant Gustin's Flash met with Ezra Miller's Flash, it was during the Crisis on Infinite Earths. It'd be kind of ironic if that very same Flash showed up at the very same circumstance in another and
see, here's my issue with having two Barry Allens, and I've always thought that this was a missed opportunity for them because Grant Gustin, everybody knows him as Barry Allen, and everybody loves him. Why couldn't Ezra Miller's character be Wally West? There's no reason why he couldn't be that. That way you can have two Flashes in one universe.
Or who's the original Flash? Not Wally West. Oh Lord, somebody help me out here. The original Flash from the Silver Age.
Oh yes, I know who
Yeah.
you're talking about. That's
What's his name? Oh Lord, I should know this one, and I feel like kind of an idiot that I don't remember.
Also,
yes, he was.
what the heck is his name?
Yeah, he was in it also. It was the guy who played Flash in the TV show from back in the days.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you couldn't do that anyway because of the environment and the setting that we've already seen Ezra Miller.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's kind of a failure of planning
Yes,
from the beginning.
Jay Garrick.
Jay Garrick. Yes.
You have
And
a
that
lot
guy was a
that you could
was
have
cool
had
too.
out there. You know what I mean?
Well,
You
there
didn't.
really is a lot.
Yeah, I know. You
Yeah.
didn't have to have.
Honestly,
Barry Allen.
I feel like the Flash is the wrong way to go. I think what they should have done was just instead of like trying to create the universe all over again right from their first movie, they should have just kept doing what they were doing with with Wonder Woman, with Aquaman and Shazam. Just release standalone movies that don't have anything to do with the universe yet, you know. And then try to work it in the follow-up films, because when Iron Man came out and when Captain America came out, they had no idea that the MCU was going to be where it was. They wanted to first test the waters and see how how it would work. So they didn't want to do too much setup for the future films in case it didn't work, in case there wasn't a good reception. But like, for example, what they did with JLA and BVS, they did all this setup that wasn't well received, and now they have to abandon it. But then, like, creating a new universe now, it none of it really makes sense. I feel like if they had just done a regular Flash movie origin story, a Green Lantern origin story, set these people up, especially right now would have been the perfect time for them to do this, because the MCU is dormant. Take this time to catch up with all your setup films, as opposed to trying to be one step ahead of MCU, but then having this mush of a film that it seems like it's going to come out. Personally, I don't know, man. I have biases against DC already, but
Leave DC alone, dude. DC's good.
Not from AJ's standpoint.
DC animated is sick. Well, the DCEU, I guess.
Sorry, I am specifically talking about the DCEU. I will say that a lot of the animated films are very, very good. I think that the DC animated films are much better than the Marvel animated films, in my opinion.
I would agree.
Yep, that's true.
But nobody's buying tickets to see the animated movies. They're not summer blockbusters. We're not, I don't know.
They do well for their medium, for DVD, Blu-ray.
Yeah, they do,
but like, that's not the same thing.
But see, the DC animated films are for the ones that are already DC nerds and fans. What about the rest of the people? How, like, I'm not going to be able to talk to my sister about, the Flash. If it's like this, I can talk to her about Iron Man. She doesn't know crap about comics and stuff like that, but she knows Iron Man.
Yeah, you have to explain the Flash there. You have to be like, okay, so it's Barry Allen, it's Wally West, it's Jay Garrick. He can go back in time. His mom died, but he brought her back to life. He also has these powers where he can like vibrate reality. Like, the Flash is so much more complicated, almost because of his power.
Flashes,
Yes, then there's Reverse Flash and like. I'm not even going to get started on how many different
Flash,
Force users there are.
Who's kind of new, Godspeed, Savitar. There are a lot.
Too many. Flash is complicated, man. That's why he gets to reboot the DC universe.
Start with Flashpoint.
I know. Yeah, and to make that point more clear, the MCU took a decade to come to its endgame. Flash it's like there's a huge difference between a decade and like a couple of years.
And it took 20 movies? Again. Whereas in the DCU we have 6, I think.
Yeah, that's it. So it's funny because this conversation really started about Michael Keaton, and we've gone like off the rails with the DCEU.
I love the idea, but it almost seems like they're gonna waste the.
They're trying to force it, man.
I'm afraid that the legacy of Michael Keaton's Batman is gonna get messed up when you bring him into the DCEU. That's kind of my biggest fear with bringing Michael Keaton into the because
you know what. Mm-hmm. Sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was gonna say that like I actually don't think that that'll be the case, because he's gonna be playing kind of a background character. I bet I don't think that he's gonna be the main focus of anything. So anything that they do happen, Michael Keaton has the luxury of being like, well, that wasn't my movie. I just did a cameo.
Yeah, but for the new generation, that's all they're going to see him as, a background character, nothing more.
He's got a good point with that.
Eli puts it well, because you are the youngest of us, and you have seen those movies, I would imagine, with Michael Keaton.
That's true, but what self-respecting parent's going to allow you to watch a new DC movie and not let you and not put you onto the Tim Burton?
That is also a good point.
Actually, well, you know what? Actually, Eli has to catch up because he has not seen the Michael Keaton movies.
Oh my god!
We have them in our bullpen, but he hasn't gotten around to them yet.
I think Wolfie just kind of like gave you a backwards insult then, because he was like, "You have no respect. How dare you not introduce your son?"
I didn't know that. I thought that you already saw it. I did not expect you to be a non-self-respecting parent.
But you know what?
You have to stand by it now.
You know what it is? I have some of the Batman films, but the ones towards the end that had the Val Kilmers and that soured me on that franchise so badly that I just recently bought the digital versions, and because it was on sale, I've got such a bad taste in my mouth with Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze. And
right, but that film
Jack
doesn't
Nicholson,
really exist.
Danny DeVito, Michelle Pfeiffer. Just the first two movies.
Listen.
Let me put it to you this way: if I were to show Eli those movies, he would immediately say, "What is he going to say? That's corny."
Well, all right. I will say.
Seriously.
Hear me out. I have.
Hold on.
Yeah.
And I have seen one of his movies.
Which one? Which movie? I'm sorry. Say that again.
The Michael Keaton movie. It was with.
There's two of them.
Yeah,
there's
it was
Batman
with
and there's Batman Returns.
I think. Yeah. I don't remember which one, but it was with Penguin. And
so
Penguin
that's the second one.
Second one, yeah.
I thought that one was like the worst one.
That's not the worst one. The ones after that are way worse.
Yeah,
that's Batman Returns.
Wait, which one did he say? Hold on, I didn't get it. Which one did you say is the worst one?
The second one.
Batman Returns with Danny DeVito.
You thought that one was the worst one with Danny DeVito and Michelle Pfeiffer?
What? Bat nipples. He doesn't know about bat nipples.
Yeah, so, you don't know about Freeze.
That hasn't happened.
Oh my god!
You don't know about Jim Carrey as the Riddler. You don't know about
any. All right, hold on. I thought Jim Carrey was absolutely amazing as the
he was
Riddler.
Awesome.
I also think that Jim Carrey would be an amazing Joker. I like Two-Face actually.
Would be. You know why I didn't like Jim Carrey, and I don't want to get too far into a conversation about those movies.
Why not? Why not? You putting it on the table? Don't diss him.
All right. So I'll throw it on there. To me, he was playing the Joker. He wasn't playing the Riddler. That's not how the Riddler acts. That's how the Joker acts.
How the Riddler acts. The Riddler is crazy.
He's much more stoic than that. He's much more stoic than that.
The Joker.
Yeah, I have to agree with Jose on this one. He's more complicated.
He's refined. He's not. The Joker is insane, and everything.
The Joker.
The Riddler is somebody who, like, yeah, he's also like out of his mind because he's one of the rogues gallery. They're all kind of out of their mind, but he has like an air of refinement to him. He's supposed to be like a stiff upper lip, kind of like I'm better than you character. He's not dancing around.
Do you not remember the scene? Do you not remember the scene where he was dressed up in tuxedo and he had that refined taste? The battles that he had with Tommy Lee Jones's character, Two-Face, where he was like, you need to have panache, a certain amount of class, and then Two-Face was the opposite. Like, he played that part also.
But most of the movie was him being Rubberface. That Jim Carrey movie where he just like did weird stuff with his face. Yeah. The Riddler's not going to make weird facial expressions like Jim Carrey.
Listen,
I don't think that that's true. I think you need to rewatch it. I saw it recently, and I don't think that like he had a couple instances where he had that that like classic Jim Carrey Rubberface kind of thing, but it
was a little Ace Ventura in there.
I was going to say he practically said "alrighty" then in this movie. Come on,
yeah.
he practically said it.
You need to rewatch it.
I did recently. I did.
I
Like,
think
I've
that he was
seen it
amazing as the Riddler.
so many times, and I just didn't get the Riddler vibe from him. I got a Joker vibe. I really did. But either way,
but he was still a fun role for him.
Yeah.
As opposed to Tommy Lee Jones, he nailed that performance. And come on, he was not good as Two-Face.
That I will agree. Two-Face was awful. Jim Carrey was just not my favorite. Like he just wasn't my favorite. That's not how I saw the character. And maybe it's a little bit of influence from also Batman the Animated Series, which influenced a lot of us from the '90s, us kids who were teenagers in the '90s. Yeah. But that Riddler,
perfect. Actually, I'm going to. You guys can't see this, so I'm going to describe it for you guys. But I'm going to send this to the group chat, and this is the cover to the Riddler's very first appearance. And if this is not Jim Carrey's Riddler,
then Batman the Animated Series, you mean? This first appearance in that, or in the comic?
In the comic.
Okay.
So I'm going to send it to the group real quick. I want you guys to see it.
Fair enough.
I will describe it. So go ahead, take a look at the group, and I want to hear your collective gasps.
All right, let's see.
He's playing the role that was played in that 1966.
I mean, we're talking about source material, right? We're talking about source material.
This is one image, though. This is one image, and I'll give you that
we're talking about the introduction. This is the introduction of the Riddler. You can't get mad if the source material is not only that very Jim Carrey-esque look, but he even has the same costume.
You know what I'll say? And then AJ, it sounds like you want to say something. I'll say that I will go back and I'll go on DC Universe or something like that, and I'll read some of his earlier comics just to address your point a little bit more, Wolfie, and maybe we can talk about this again in the future, because there'll certainly be some Batman news that we'll get to talk about as the new movies come out. So I'll go back and I'll look at the origin of the Riddler in the comics. But the only thing I will say, and then I'll open up the floor to AJ and to you, Wolfie, to respond if you wish to do so, is that something that Walt almost mentioned a second ago. This is the origin of like the kind of like Watusi, like freaking like Batman cartoon from the 60s. It's a different aesthetic. And I'm not going to take away the fact that you're right. In this image, there's a Jim Carrey vibe. But like, again, this is like Batcopter, shark repellent spray Batman.
And what Batman movie are we talking about?
But that's when they made him darker, though. You have to admit that too. That's when they took the Dark Knight and brought him into like
true, but we're talking about a specific Batman film. That Batman film was the Batcopter and the special sprays and the flame retarding cape and all that stuff.
Oh no, I'm talking about Batman in the '89 though. Now that's when we got the Dark Knight. The Batman from back then in the '60s.
Right. No, I understand. What I'm saying is that the Schumacher films, more resembled the I would say maybe a mixture of I guess maybe a blend of like that early, really, really dramatic Batman with the darker elements. Because I think Val Kilmer played off a little bit of that darker Batman. But we're also talking about Batman that had nipples. So
yeah, that's true. It was a very colorful and strange film. And actually, we should mention, like, rest in peace, Joel Schumacher, because he passed away recently. And even though those aren't our favorite films, he made some great ones. Like Falling Down is a really awesome movie, and I just want to mention, the man made some great films. But for me, I think most of us in this crew, and especially I think Eli would say, the Schumacher versions of Batman are really corny. They're super corny. And I don't know if I wanted that vibe from the Riddler in this movie. But again, to be fair, based on your point, he read those comics and he played it based off of those, which you can't fault him for. And it's not Jim Carrey's performance so much as I wasn't with the vibe, but that's almost a different argument than what we're having here.
The only reason that I would watch that movie, though, to be honest.
Who's the only reason you would watch that movie?
Jim Carrey. He's the only reason I would go back and watch that movie.
That's kind of true also.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just sent a couple more pictures. These are all from different eras of the Riddler, just to show you how they drew the Riddler. And just by seeing how they drew him, you can see that there's more than just that sophisticated, look. There is a maniacal, crazy Riddler behind him.
That's fair enough. And I'll revisit the comics, as I said. I mean, AJ, what do you think of Jim Carrey's portrayal? And I mean, I know this is kind of off the topic that we were talking about, but it does relate to the Batman that we're going to get, which is a different aesthetic from the movies that we have now. Like, what did you think about all that and how we can relate that to the new movies that are coming out, which you're probably going to hate anyway, because it sounds like it's going to be a mess.
Well,
have you seen the Jim Carrey movie?
I actually have not. No.
Oh
gosh, Walter.
No,
then I don't remember it because
I
don't remember.
With Eli, I don't know, but with you, we saw those movies.
We got a lot of work to do.
The only one I actually remember is the one with the Joker, and the one with Catwoman.
Oh yeah, that was the second one.
I remember that one too. That one was so corny.
We did do.
Yeah,
I do remember doing a marathon of the old Batman movies with you.
I think you might need to do that again, just so we can update them and prepare them for the mess that's going to be Flashpoint, perhaps. I don't
know if I can handle Eli's reactions to the movies, especially after the second one.
Eli. One thing that I will tell you is that you have to understand where films were in that time. There's no like real huge technological prowess. There wasn't. I mean, the bat cow, the cape and the cowl, you couldn't even turn your head. He had to turn his whole body because technology wasn't there to even create a cowl where he could turn his head. And
I mean, we didn't even get that until the second most recent movie. Remember?
What was that?
We didn't even get a cowl where he could turn his head until The Dark Knight.
Yeah, until The Dark Knight.
Recent movies.
Yeah, that was the first movie where he could turn his head. And the thing is that you have to take that into account. Especially the other thing too is that like comic book films in the early 90s or even the 90s. I mean, I would say the biggest budget comic book film was the Schumacher films. But even before then, even the Superman films, while the Superman films grossed, quite a bit at the time because of his popularity, most comic book stories and films and TV shows were fringe and nobody wanted to put money behind them.
Yeah, they were definitely more just for kids back then. And now comic books for everybody.
Yeah, you gotta really take that into account when you watch these movies before you just call them straight up corny.
He was going to call them corny anyway.
Yeah, you also have to take into account that after a while, those movies are crap. So
I understand.
Just know that too.
But that doesn't mean it's not corny.
No, you're right. It doesn't mean that at all. But some movies age better than others, I guess.
I mean, the Schumacher films 1,000,000% super duper corny. There's like, when I saw it, I was going on a Batman marathon, and I was like, God, I can't, like, how much time is left in this movie?
I mean, listen, they even going back to the Keaton films, they made a point of doing these symbolisms, with Batman. Like I remember that, there's a point where the bat plane flies up to the moon just for no other reason than to create a bat symbol on the moon.
Yeah,
that was pretty cool though.
Reason to do it. It was just
awesome,
to do that.
But it was kind of corny in like outside of context. No, I agree. It was awesome. It's still going to be awesome to this day for those of us that watch that movie. But if you think about it, like, why is Batman doing that? Why is he pausing in the middle of a battle to be like, haha, I'm going to fly in front of the moon?
I don't think he did that in the middle of a battle. I think that was the end of the movie.
No, dude, that was he got shot down after that by the giant Joker gun. That was in the middle of the battle.
That was during that one. It wasn't during the second one.
Oh, it was the first one. It was the first one. That's when the city was being poisoned.
Yeah,
he was like, take down the moon. So people were dying, and he was like, "I'm going to fly up and make the bat signal, and then save everybody."
Well, still, again, first Batman film, all right.
I mean, I liked it. Don't get me wrong; it was an awesome moment. But in context, if you're looking at it as somebody who's watching a modern comic book movie, if you saw that in a modern comic book movie, you'd be like, "What on earth is he doing?" Like 50 people just died because he decided to go fly up into the sky and do something stupid.
Let's put it this way: if the beginning of BVS was Bruce Wayne driving through, I'm sorry, the beginning of what was it, Justice League? Him driving through, trying to get to his employees, and he just decides to stop.
No, that was BVS. That was
making
BVS.
a bat signal on the side of the building. That's kind of that moment. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my gosh, you guys
it was still awesome when it happened. But I'm just saying, if you think about it, it makes no sense.
Something that you guys were talking about before, since I haven't watched like any of the movies without context, that just sounded so bad.
Oh my god,
dude, that's like it's like a wrestling match. It's like hulking up before you get to like the actual fight.
It's a cool shot. Like,
it's
come
a
on,
cool.
like,
No, I'm not saying it's not a cool shot. Nobody's disagreeing with that.
But
But
you're saying that it's a corny shot too. You're also saying it's corny.
But it's not. That's not corny so much as it's like, what is Batman doing? Like a bunch of people just died because he decided to fly up in the sky and flaunt the fact that he's Batman.
Did you guys forget that we're also talking about? Hold on. Did you also forget that we're talking about a guy that dresses up as a bat? If we want to like be realistic,
I get it, but Batman's also supposed to be efficient and badass. He's not supposed to like. He's also not flashy.
Symbolism.
Batman's not flashy.
Are you kidding me? He puts the bat symbol on the hubcaps of his wheels.
Yeah, but he doesn't go out of his way to do flashy things, is what I'm saying.
Pulled off to do that. He pulled off a dogfighting tactic called an Immelman, where there was nobody he was dogfighting with.
Nobody was shooting at him.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
It was an amazing shot. Everybody in the movie theater was like, "Oh my god, that's so cool." But but when you look at it like 30 years later, you're like, "Yo, again, Batman just let a bunch of people die." Like Batman wouldn't do that. Batman would not.
Bullet. He also got shot down by one bullet from a revolver with a 30-foot barrel.
Yeah, I get that too. But the Joker would probably do something like that. That the Joker would do. That's something the Joker would definitely do.
Absolutely. A 30-foot barrel doesn't even fit in his pants.
No, I know. But it's the Joker.
Well, unless
he's talents and like
never mind. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my god.
Anyway,
man got skills. So
anyway, I think we all kind of got like a little lukewarm about this Michael Keaton thing in a sense, because I'm actually afraid that they're going to ruin, because again, even though we're kind of criticizing it right now, it's okay to criticize it because, we love a lot of things and we're still okay with criticizing it to a certain extent. And like you said, Wolfie, it can't be detached from the time period where it came out. Also, this is something that's going to happen in those kinds of movies because you need moments like that for the fans. But I'm kind of worried that they're going to ruin Batman and Batman Returns. I honestly don't care what you think, Eli. Batman Returns is awesome. So whatever. Danny DeVito is not that corny, and neither is Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman.
I need to watch it again.
Yeah, watch it again. I mean, you know what? It was a
we
little
have like a family night. Watch it so that like we can make sure that we skew your opinion towards ours.
We should do a Mystery Science Theater 3000 type cast where we watch it and comment on it.
Oh my god,
that would be interesting. No, I don't know. It's probably not gonna happen. But I mean, what do you
think with Dragon Ball Evolution?
What do you guys think? No.
I've only seen parts of that on the internet, and I'm already repulsed.
Yeah, I showed him a video of like literally a couple of scenes, and bro, I could tell you he was bugging out.
I just have to look at Piccolo in that movie.
He's a scroll. He's
done
a scroll.
With that.
I feel like we should start like a movement to
was a freaking Ozaru.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I feel like we should like start like a petition to have the studio that, if they still exist, demand an apology from them to the Dragon Ball community.
They did.
I think the director already apologized.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, I think Derek did.
Really? They did? I didn't see it. I didn't get it. Where was my apology in the mail?
On our non-existent podcast.
Yeah.
I don't need an apology because I didn't watch it. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't exist to me, so I don't need an apology.
We actually, like Eli said, we had recorded a podcast where, and this was right after Broly came out. So we decided, you know what, let's do some counter programming and let's see the old Dragon Ball Evolution. And we actually did record an episode, but we never released it because it was so bad that literally there was nothing positive in that podcast. And I felt that it was just a public service for us not to release it, you know.
I mean, so, if The Last of Us Part 2 is any indication, people like hate, so we could hate on it all we want. People would probably love our hateful reactions to that movie. The only problem is I would want to jump out of something if I were to watch that movie. So that's really the only problem that I have.
The problem is that after we recorded it, I think me and Eli were depressed for like weeks afterwards. You know what I'm saying? So it was kind of tough to put it out there and relive it.
Oh, man. I think so. What's our general consensus on this Michael Keaton Flashpoint thing? Do we want to kind of summarize it?
You know, I think that it's not that we're lukewarm to the, Michael Keaton Batman cameo or whatever nature he's going to be in. We're lukewarm towards the idea of DC doing it properly in the Flashpoint series, because if they brought him back and they did just a regular Flash movie with Michael Keaton in it and as a cameo or whatever, then I bet you it'll be way better than trying to incorporate him into Flashpoint when we know how much work they need to do and how much story they got to put into Flashpoint. And that's me not knowing anything about Flashpoint.
Okay. Walt,
I think for me, it's not so. I'm actually excited about seeing Michael Keaton don the cape again, and hopefully, we do see an iteration of Batman Beyond and him playing the mentor role and stuff like that. Yeah. I guess my issue really is that I don't trust WB to do the movie justice, and I'm afraid that if they let the director do his thing, and they don't like it, we may get a situation where it's Suicide Squad and Justice League all over again, where there's studio meddling that ruins a property that really, you've got to treat with, reverence and stuff.
Okay.
I know Michael Keaton will kill it because we've seen him in other roles, and as he's matured, he's become such a greater actor. I mean, I would tend to think that he probably play an even better Batman right now, because of the maturity level that he has as an actor. I'm just afraid that WB, to quote a comment that AJ had said earlier, I'm afraid that WB would screw the pooch with this and really mess it up and tarnish, the what the original Batman and Batman Returns was.
Okay. Eli?
Okay.
Eli? Eli, what's your opinion?
Oh, okay.
I felt like we lost him there for a second.
I don't really know what to say. I'm really iffy about what's happening with the DCEU.
Have you, even though you haven't really seen the Batman movies with Michael Keaton, have you ever seen any scenes with him as Batman, or have you ever seen a movie with Michael Keaton? Like, I mean, you point to Spider-Man Homecoming where he was Vulture. Have you seen him in a role that you really liked him? Maybe approach it from that angle since you haven't seen it as much.
Vulture was like literally the only scene that's popping into my head. But yeah, I did really like him in that movie. He played like a really good bad guy. But I don't.
Okay.
I can't. It's hard to see him as a good guy, even though I haven't like actually. It's hard to base. It's hard to come up with like what I think might happen with this if I don't really have like anything to base it off of. Like I only remember him from Homecoming. Really.
Okay. Well, I mean, let me ask it in this way, because if you remember in Homecoming, he's a bad guy, but he's also kind of a good guy because he doesn't give up Spider-Man, and he's doing it for his family. So, and remember this also, Batman is kind of, in at least in my opinion, he's the original anti-hero because he's a good guy, but he's nuts and he has weird methods, and he's probably almost as crazy as the villains that he fights. So if you look at it in that context,
Just one
can
bad
you
day.
maybe see how, because remember, Batman is not sane, right? Michael Keaton, at least in my opinion, he plays unhinged pretty well, but again, he's also doing things in the Spider-Man movie. He didn't want to kill Spider-Man, like he wasn't a pure bad guy. So if you look at it from that angle, I mean, what do you think? Maybe does that help maybe clarify it for you a little bit?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and you know what? Now that I think of it, I think he might be a good role for he would be a good role for Batman, because
Okay.
he
Okay. So
he does sort of have that like dark tone to him, but at the same time you can kind of see like the parts where he plays hero in yeah.
in Spider-Man.
It's
Okay.
interesting because Eli's in that demographic where he really, Michael Keaton's so far removed from being Batman that news really doesn't resonate that great with him as opposed to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I understand that. So that's why I tried to give it a little context. So I'd like AJ to actually wrap this one up. So I'll give my opinion really quickly as well. I can actually see him being an awesome role, but I can see it being a little bit like Batman versus Superman, where if you don't get the full movie or if there's a lot of interference, what did we get in that movie that was kind of stand out in comparison to everything else? We got Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman was kind of the best part of that movie, at least in my opinion. At least a lot of people felt that way, which is why the Wonder Woman movie was so well received. I can see this Flashpoint movie that they're trying to do falling into the same trap, which is what I'm worried about. But at the same time, I'm also looking forward to seeing Michael Keaton, in his own words, wanting to get nuts. Let's get nuts from the original Batman movie. Like, I love how, like, I think to this day, and we talked about this before, I think he balances Batman and Bruce Wayne better than anybody else. Better than anybody else. He might not be the best Batman. He might not be the best Bruce Wayne. But when you saw him as Batman in that original movie, and it's also because of like Michael Keaton's look, let's be honest. He looks like he's a little unhinged sometimes. But you got the sense that, yeah, okay, here's this guy he's a playboy, he's a millionaire, he's a hero, he wants to do the right thing. But he's also crazy. Like, there's something wrong with this guy. And that's something that you don't see necessarily. Like, you didn't really see that in the Christian Bale Batman. He was just kind of depressed. He wasn't so much unhinged. You got a little bit more of that, I think, when Ben Affleck played the role. But it still didn't have that same level of like Batman being maybe somebody that belongs in Arkham Asylum with all the rest of the guys that he's constantly fighting, which has always been, again, this is my opinion, to me that's been something that defines Batman. He belongs in there pretty much with the people that he's trying to stop. And whether he's doing it for good reasons or not, I mean, that's something that Michael Keaton brought to the role, at least in my opinion, again, better than anyone else.
That's really interesting because I don't think that, like, in the comics that you see a Bruce Wayne that's unhinged. We know that he's unhinged because of his obsession with being the Batman and all his duties at all costs, but you don't see him act that out publicly with anyone in the comics. Like when Bruce Wayne did that, when Michael Keaton did that, he did that more as a scare tactic, in that scene, if you remember correctly. But I don't think that he did that. I don't know.
He has moments in the
comics. It's an interesting thing to like. I don't know if like you can if Bruce Wayne has ever really shown himself unhinged to other people.
He might have done it. I mean, he's done it with villains though, and he did do it with the Joker in that movie. But it's a fair point. I agree with you. Yeah. It's a fair point. But I
Because Ben
would
Affleck
like,
is still my Batman. I'm just saying, Ben Affleck, you the man.
yeah, I would like to see a little bit of that because I really enjoyed how in that movie he was well put together, and then there was that moment where it's like, okay, like there really is something wrong with this guy, and we, like I said, we all know that Batman is not completely sane, and maybe you're right, Wolfie, that he really only shows those moments in the comics as Batman with the cowl on, because those are the only moments, like, you know, when he busts out in laughter with the Joker at the end of that comic. That's a moment where you see that. But you're right, he was in the cape and the cowl in that moment. He's much more controlled as Bruce Wayne.
I mean, I will say that, like, and not to, I know that we still got a few more other opinions to go through, but just a final point here is that one of the reasons I like Ben Affleck so much as Batman is because he did actually show, I think, his, him being unhinged in some scenes with Alfred, where his obsession with trying to beat Superman is where we actually got to see an unhinged Bruce Wayne, where he's not shaving and he doesn't care about, like, what happens, and he's just like basically like, I will cross these lines, I don't care,
and he made mistakes
to destroy Superman. Yeah, he made these mistakes and stuff like that out of pure blindness, and I think that was, I think, in film, the closest that we've seen an unhinged Bruce Wayne.
That's a good point. That is a very good point.
I got your back.
AJ, what about you, buddy?
My outlook is going to be the bleakest of them all. I have
gathered
little to no faith in this Flashpoint movie. It's like I said earlier, you're going from Iron Man to Captain America Civil War to Avengers Endgame. It doesn't work. I'm sorry. Okay. And as far as the Michael Keaton news goes, I mean, from one standpoint, I can see how excited you guys can be. It's great, but like if this is gonna be a train wreck, that's not a good place to be. Literally the only thing that I am hoping they take away from this mangled cesspool is that they start fresh. Flashpoint, like said numerous times on this podcast, is their way of resetting everything. Do it right this time around, for God's sake. That is all I have to say about that.
If this is the start point and it is a cesspool, as you described it, I wouldn't be hopeful if I were you. But they have had some good movies recently. I do love Michael Keaton. I'm not sure about, as I think you said it earlier or Eli said it earlier, I'm not certain, going from, or actually it might have been, I don't know who said this, but somebody did mention, and you can say it who it was. You go from the dude bro Aquaman that was you. Yeah. You go from dude bro Aquaman to like cutthroat, maniacal, world conquering Aquaman is tough. Going from sweet love conquers all, Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman, to again cutthroat, maniacal, slicing heads off, war with Atlantis, Wonder Woman might be tough. And then we have all the complications with, it's not supposed to be in the DCEU, but Robert Pattinson's going to play Batman. You already have a crossover between the Flash TV show with Grant Gustin's Barry Allen and Ezra Miller's Barry Allen in the movies. There is a really good chance that for those reasons and more, something that might even be muddled by the nature of the story they're trying to tell could be even freaking worse. So I guess the general... Go ahead. What's up?
Actually, there is a way where you could say love conquers all. When Wonder Woman kills Aquaman, he'll be like, dude, bro, I want to give my heart to you. And she's like, really? Sure, I'll take it, and then I'll feed it to you. and then she'll rip his heart out and then make him eat it. And love conquers all. There you go.
I guess the heart conquers all in this case. The physical manifestation of love.
Pretty good.
That is pretty
Good.
dark.
That's how it's supposed to be.
It is supposed to be like that. All right. So I guess the general consensus is we're a little worried. We like the Michael Keaton news, but we're afraid that he's going to be kind of lost in the shuffle of all of this. DC, if you're listening, and of course we know you're listening because everybody listens to our podcast, take some more time and give Flashpoint another year. Wait for at least one more movie to come out. That's how I feel. Set something up in Wonder Woman 84. Maybe a mention in something. I don't care what the heck it is. Even if it's a Tony Stark moment or a Nick Fury moment, they have to set something up in moments or post-credit scenes. I mean, if we were really approaching this from the proper angle, this movie probably shouldn't be coming out until like freaking 2024. It shouldn't be coming out in 2021. So I guess our consensus is we hope they do well by this, but the track record is not good. Did I kind of summarize that fairly well for everybody?
Sure. Yeah. Or, I mean, they could just not do it.
Or that. Definitely watch the animated film when you get a chance. I know you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, but watch the animated Flashpoint movie. It's really good, and it's a great story. But that's from a perspective of somebody who's a big fan and understands these things and has seen the setup in the other animated movies. So I guess we'll see. All right. I think we're going to wrap it up here, right? I think we've had enough to say about this, at least for today. What do you guys think?
Yeah. I think so.
Yep.
Anybody else? Yeah. I think AJ put it best. He's like, no, we're done. All right. Well, thank you to all of our Get Geekdom, all of our fans out there for joining us once again on another episode of the Get Geek podcast. Once again, as a quick reminder, the best way to support us is to like, rate, share, subscribe. Check out our Instagram page at Get Geek Podcast. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, wherever your favorite podcasts are sold. As a reminder, for those of you who are listening, again, we are giving away another Funko Pop this week. It's a Vegeta Funko Pop, Vegeta Training Funko Pop. So it's actually a very specific one, a little bit more of a limited one. You can go to our Instagram page at Get Geek Podcast to find out more information on how you can enter. So take a look at that. Again, like, rate, share, and subscribe. If you have any feedback for us, please let us know. Thanks for joining us this week on our podcast about Michael Keaton, Flashpoint, a little bit of The Last of Us Part 2. We hope you've checked out some of our recent podcasts where we talked about the PS5 versus the Xbox Series X, or last week when we had a discussion about our favorite video game endings of all time. If you guys want to go back and take a listen to any of that and let us know what you think of those, like, rate, share, and subscribe those as well. That's the best way to support us if you really, really enjoy our podcast. So we want to thank you for those of you that will do that and those of you who have supported us thus far. So, yeah, that's it. Again, as always, for those of you out there that are listening, for all of those in the Get Geekdom, stay geeky, my friend.